Without question, horse racing is inextricably linked to betting, but is it really all about the gamble? Are most owners really just in it to win big with the bookies? To find out, we've asked a trainer, a jockey, and two very different owners what experiences they've had and what the mechanics of targeting a race to land a gamble actually look like.
You're listening to a special edition of the Knowledge Podcast featuring prominent racehorse owner Noel Hayes, Irish trainer Johnny Levins, Cheltenham Festival winning jockey Paddy Aspel, and Tim Dykes, the racehorse owner who won a lucky 63 when the last leg was his own horse.
Tim Dykes is where we're going to start because what he has experienced is the ultimate for any racehorse owner who likes a bet. One fateful day at Sandown, his favourite racecourse, he placed a lucky 63 bet to have an interest in the whole card. The last leg, to win a very, very handsome six-figure sum, was his own horse, Ishikawa. He had been bought as a hurdler, but did not stay anything like the minimum trip of 2 miles, so ended up back on the flat. Here's what happened next.
He won a nice race at Ascot in the April of 2014. And then he went on the following race after that. He went to Sandown, where we really fancied him on soft ground. It was my favourite track, Sandown, favourite night of the year, which is a Brigadier Gerard evening meeting. And he was in the last race. So I often do a multiple bet through the card when I go racing. Theoretically, it's a mud bet, although it's been those type of bets have been very lucrative for me personally. I remember sitting down in the morning, going through the card, and actually thought this is quite gettable. I quite fancied. I had 2 or 3 quite strong fancies, some good value in a couple of the other races where I thought, where I don't know, had a great chance of backing the winner or at least a place. So I did a lucky 63 on the 6 races, obviously with Ishikawa as the last leg. And I think he opened, I think it was 25 to 1, but the favourite was pulled out, and it was then 10 to 1. Well, after the favourite had been pulled out. So I had 10 to 1 on Ishii, basically. And then had 5 winners, the first 5 horses all won, and had all this, a huge amount of money then running onto Ishii. He took it up, turning into a straight, got onto the hedge on the stand side where you want to be at Sandown on soft ground, and never really looked like getting caught. So yeah, it was a wonderful evening, very enjoyable. I had lots of friends and family with me that night as well, so they'd all backed it at the big price earlier on. So yeah, that was certainly right up there, one of the best days of my life.
Tim Dykes had odds of 10 to 1 on Ishikawa winning, having backed him in that multiple earlier that day. By the time the market opened just before the race, he was 13 to 2, and he was sent off the 5 to 2 favourite. There is no question that this was called a gamble, but Dykes had not laid this horse out for this race. He won 2 races ago at 15 to 2 and had been a beaten favourite last time out. Neither had Dykes put all his money on him. That's not to say that Dykes has never engineered a gamble.
I think it depends. I think sometimes it is, and I've been involved in when I've got a horse running. I know it's going to run well, and I've engineered a really nice gamble on it. And the horse has been backed in from 16 to 1 on 4 to 1, and sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. More often than not, if you get it right, you're getting great value and you're going to make money on those. Other ones are just there's a lot of supposition, I think, isn't there, in racing. A good example, I had a runner called Forshaw, one of my first 2-year-olds that I bred, and he was running at Southall on Wednesday. And I think he was 16 to 1 the night before. And somebody called me and said, "Oh, have you piled into yours at Southall tomorrow?" And of course I hadn't. It had gone from 16 to 1 to 8 to 1. But overnight, those overnight gambles you probably don't need much money going on them. Somebody's just spotted that it's maybe owned by me, trained by Carl Burke. That's got a fairly big percentage profit, and somebody might have had 50 quid on it or something. So, and that's not a real gamble. It was not a penny of my money. We thought he'd run well. We thought he'd have a really good chance of running decently, but it wasn't. I'd normally be going in on the exchanges fairly late, and it was backed in, I think, to 4 to 1, and he ran fine. Didn't really act on the track, but yeah, that would be an example where it's not.
Yes, Dykes is a punter, who happens to own and now breeds horses. But whilst that is an element of his experience, it's not his motivation. Neither is it the motivation of Noel Hayes, perhaps best known for owning Grade 1 winning hurdler Al Connor, who he then sold for a tidy profit.
No, definitely not. I think it is an element of it, but it wouldn't be my primary motivation whatsoever. My primary motivation is very much focused on the commercial aspect of horse racing, and is very much focused on trying to get young horses to perform on the track and show some promise and reach a level of form, and then sell that horse on to somebody else. I would be of the belief that one of the most expensive commodities you can sell or buy is hope. So if you have a young horse that's raced once or twice and shown a good level of form, what you really have is a lot of hope, and you're selling a lot of hope on to somebody else.
It's not that Hayes does not bet, he does, and he does specifically keep horses to bet on, but the vast majority are for selling on, and that makes it not worth betting on them, says he.
I don't actually tend to back my own horses like some people think I do. The reason being is that if I've bought a horse for say 50 grand and it's cost me an additional 10 or 12 grand to get him to the track. So let's say a horse is costing 65k to get to the track, and if I own half of them, I've already 32.5 grand at risk there. So I don't particularly have an appetite, irrespective of what my trainer might say to me in terms of the horse's ability. I don't particularly have an appetite to make that horse more expensive in the eventuality that he loses, because if the horse wins, the upside is quite significant. If the horse loses, you've got big downside without adding to that downside. So from a financial perspective, it doesn't make sense. And also from an emotional perspective, it doesn't make sense. If the horse wins, it's hard, the money won't add to a bigger high. But if the horse loses, the loss will certainly make you feel a lot more down.
But there are definitely times when that win is boosted by having money on it. And one of the best for Hayes was Now or Never's win at the Galway Festival.
If I was to think of a horse that I would have owned that I had a good bet on, I would go back as far as Now and Never in Galway. A couple of years ago, she won the Maiden. Michael O'Callaghan trained her at the time, and Michael was incredibly bullish about her, which obviously subsequently proved to be correct. She was placed in an Irish Guineas. She was a Group 2 winner in Australia. She was a Group 3 winner here in Ireland. She was fourth in the Coronation Stakes in Royal Ascot. And she turned up in the Fillies Maiden in Galway. And Michael gave us, the owners, a lot of confidence. And I remember backing her in cash on the day in the ring in Galway, which can be done in Galway. It's one of the few places you can do it. And I ran out of pockets to stuff money into by the time I'd finished collecting, because I think we probably averaged around 6 or 7 to 1 on her that day, and it was a great day out, because Galway is very close to my own heart in terms of horse racing. So to have a runner in Galway and a winner in Galway, and then to back it as well on top of that was it was a very, very memorable day and a very special day.
So how do you do it? How do you set about landing a gamble with a horse? Do you just ask the trainer? Tim Dykes puts it very well when he says it's more organic than mechanic. And he adds,
probably contrary to popular opinion, but Carl Staywood doesn't really work like that. They certainly in the last few years, they wouldn't be laying out that many horses for a gamble at a small track. Everything's moved on with them now. They're trying to get horses rated as high as possible and run as well as possible in all their races. But what does happen is you can go up there, have a chat with Carl about your horse or other trainers, and you can that I've had horses with, and just say how are they working. What I like to know is who they've worked with, so I can look at the ratings, try and get some idea of respective weights in gallops as well. And just get my own feeling, really. So it's more my opinion than the trainer's opinion. All I want to know is how the horse has been working, who it's been working with, and is it in rude health, and then I'll make my own mind up based on the market on whether I'm going to bet on it.
The experience has been the same for Noel Hayes, who again says that the process is not about deciding weeks in advance.
I always find that it works in reverse, and this may seem strange. what you end up having is you might have a horse that has a level of form, or that you think has some upside to him, but oftentimes horses, as we see very, very frequently, their form changes, or the pattern and profile of their form changes. Sometimes you can have a 6-year-old handicapper who's gone from 90 down to 70 because he's fallen out of love with the game, and you switch him to a different stable where he's rejuvenated, where a different routine, maybe he's able to have a trip to the beach or this sort of stuff, and it kind of freshens him up, and that freshening up allows him to return to his former level of form, or towards his former level of form. And I tend to think that that's what actually works better. Like I regularly laugh at people who tell me they're handicapping a horse, and I often think, well, that I might look at the horse and say that horse is more than capable of handicapping himself. You don't need to give him any assistance. And so for me, it's a lot of time it's finding an angle or finding a horse. Sometimes it's a trainer angle. Sometimes you see a horse in the horse and training sale, and it's run to a level of form. You might think from reviewing its videos that it should run over a different trip or a different style of racing. You might also layer on top of that, you might see that trainer has been running at 5% for the last 6 months, and it seems evident that there's been some sort of a virus in their yard. There's also trainers in the UK who train horses who really don't want a horse in their yard unless it's kind of 90 plus. So they might have a horse that's won a maiden in the all-weather. It looks like a 75 rated horse. A winter maiden on the all-weather looks like a 75 rated horse, but it doesn't fit the profile of the horse that they want to continue to train. So it goes to the horse and training sale, and so there's lots and lots of angles there that you can look for. So for me, I think, and I observe people who do it, and I'm not saying that they can't do it successfully, but for me, my motivation isn't to try and get a horse, start him from scratch, get him off a mark at 55, and then get him land a punt and get him to a mark of 75 because that's where his true form is. I actually think that's quite difficult. If you find a horse that has a level of form and can run to a level of form, and if you can find out what ails that horse, it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be environmental, and if you can correct that's actually more valuable, because often it costs less to correct that than it does to handicap horse. That's more valuable to you as an owner, as somebody who might be trying, to get a better way, than actually handicapping one from the top down.
From the point of view of the trainer, putting value on a horse is most important to make the game viable for its owner, and the quickest way to gain value for a flat horse or a jumps horse is to win a maiden event, whether that's a point-to-point, a hurdle race, or a flat maiden. When trainer Johnny Levins is asked by an owner about landing a punt, or reckons he has an owner that is going to want to bet on his horse, that's what he reminds them.
I don't think any good trainer out there is aiming for a horse not to win a maiden. You just don't do that. You learn a lot more money, and there'll be a lot quicker turnaround if you win your maiden. If you win your maiden, you're on the market, international market then, and there's not as much training fees for your owner gone into the horse either, because he's, to win your maiden, you win on your first or second run. So that would be the ideal scenario with an owner, to make a few quid, to make the game viable for him, is to win your maiden early doors and cash in and go again. The handicapping process is you'd give your horse a run, let the handicapper assess him, and then he gives him a fair mark that puts him competitive in a race. And then you could find yourself, the horse is just getting to learn how to race and coming to himself, and he's got a mark of, let's say 70. And he's had a few runs in handicaps, and he's finishing 4th and 5th, and just not getting his head in front, but he develops and learns at racing and improves. And now you can say, Jesus, this fella's actually going very well at home. He learns about the job. He's after straightening up, muscling up. We're going to get a little bit of improvement when we step him up a furlong trip. And then you find a race for him, and you have him that's his D-Day. You say, listen, we think he's going to be spot on today. He's running off a mark of 70. We're going to get a bit of improvement over the extra furlong, and he's physically matured and strengthened up, and mentally he's matured up. And you train him for that day, and the objective then for him is to pick that day, and the owner can have a bet on him, and hopefully then he wins. And it looks as if you've had a master plan there and setting the horse up and landed a right touch for an owner, when really just you've learned about the horse, and the horse has found his level and he's improved a little bit, and you look as, he's probably a bit of value then, given his price and things like that, and the owner has a bet, and the bookmakers react then, and everybody else follows on to see the money for the horse, and the horse wins, and then you have the term gamble landed.
Jockey Paddy Aspel agrees with Levens that most times, though admittedly not every time, a horse pops up to win what's called a gamble because Connections finally found its level and had them in the right form on that exact day. They didn't necessarily plan it that way.
The thing is, it's not necessarily about breaking any rules if an owner says, I wouldn't mind having a touch with this horse, because the thing is, it's just all about finding the horse's level, because the horse mightn't be good enough to win a maiden hurdle, whether you want to win one or not. But you can run them in your 3 maiden hurdles or your 3 novice chases, whatever the case, and it gives you a chance to get a look at your horse, see what sort of ground he wants, and maybe just get an idea of actually how much ability he has. And, if you think that, the handicapper has given you a reasonable chance, on what you've shown. But like I said, you've got to have, if you are wanting to have a few quid on, I think you've got to, if the handicapper is giving you 98 and you think your horse could be very competitive off 95, you're not going to be very confident then, because you haven't got anything in hand. But whereas if he lets you in off 88 and you think your horse is a 95 or 100 horse, a trainer could be more confident that you could have a bit in hand, and you could be nicely handicapped.
So it seems like landing a gamble is less about deciding 6 months in advance, and it's more about on the day, today, I think this horse has a good chance and it's at the right price.
Of course it is, yeah. And I mean, like I say, it's all about horses finding their level, because, a horse could have a rating of 115 and you think you think on paper, we've got quite a reasonable horse here, but he might never be a 115 horse, and he could be. You could run him 10 times and he win nothing, but during that 10 times, his mark will obviously reduce down to somewhere where he's capable of. So it's a difficult one. Certain trainers, like I say, are very, very good at it, but it's just a case of finding your level. Unless they're above average, and even if you don't think you're that well handicapped, they can still go and win anyway. But that's when they're above average. But you're not going to get many of them. You're generally dealing with horses in the same sort of bracket, really. But it's something that is difficult to do, but it isn't entirely possible.
So with all this talk about finding a horse's level, how does trainer Johnny Levens do that? Is it as simple as, if this horse can work with a 70 rated horse, then it is 70 rated class? Is it as simple as that?
No, it's not. It's not as simple as that. I always take shave off. If I think he's a 70 horse at home, I always shave off a little bit, because they're in their comfort zone at home, and they'll always nearly work to a certain mark. They're surrounded. They have their own surroundings. They're more comfortable. They're not out of their comfort zone. I always feel they'll always work a little bit better at home when they go to the track. If I say, he's working 75, he is a 75 rated horse, I think you'd be disappointed more often than not. And if he runs better than that, then happy days. But they normally run a little bit less than at home. As I said, you've got to factor in the travelling. They're at the races for a few hours. There's a lot of nervous energy being used up, and then in the race, then it's a different ballgame than working at home. So I always shave off a little bit to what they're working at home. But there's a lot of factors in. I mean, if it was easy as that, everyone would be doing it.
This phrase, finding his level, could easily be perceived by outsiders as something a trainer says, when in fact they mean that was the first day they were fit enough to win. Levens is quick to shut that down though, saying that not only is it against regulations, but that it's a huge welfare issue that has absolutely no benefits.
No, you can't do that. There's a rule against that. What happens then under that rule is you're using the race course as a schooling ground. You don't do that, and it's not right. It wouldn't be fair on the horse. It'd be like you asking you to go and run a marathon tomorrow. You get all sorts of injuries. So you get your horse fit. fit and train them at home, and you run them. And as I said, then the handicapper can assess them then on 3 runs and give them a mark to make them competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have different levels and different grades. Bottom grades of 45 to 65, where obviously most horses are in that bracket, because there's a lot of, the good horses are very hard to find, So you get your mark then, and you try to get them competitive in that mark, and a lot of horses then just their opening mark or their official mark might be too high, and they'll eventually find their level back down, getting dropped in the handicap as the handicapper gets to see them more. They'll become more exposed, and they eventually fall down to their level and they get competitive. But you run your horse fit because your horse has to be trained, has to finish, it has to run a certain level of form on the track to get a handicap mark. I mean, if your running horse is not fit and finishing out the back, you get too low of a mark. You find it hard to get into races, and the horse will learn how to lose,
Mm-hmm.
And he won't enjoy the game, because if he's halfway up the straight and he's not fit and blows up and gets tired and he doesn't get to the line, it's very hard to bring him home and train him again, because you have to give him, days off and get him back, and then you're falling into respiratory problems, and horse can burst them when they're put under pressure, their larynx overusing it, and so it's just, you just don't do that. It doesn't work like that,
So we've heard about real gambles, like Now or Never at Galway, but the vast majority of what our trainer, jockey and owners have described is not really how we would define a gamble. And yet, these scenarios would have probably caused betting odds to shorten and headline writers to declare they were indeed gambles. It begs the question, in the wider scheme of things outside our 4-strong study, are most gambles just illusions?
Obviously, it can be premeditated, but oftentimes it's an illusion. What people fail to realise is that what drives the markets on course in Ireland and the UK is often little more than the loose change in the ashtray in your car. In the early, you might take if you take a 0 to 65 or 0 to 60 or whatever in Wolverhampton, those prices are being formed via exchanges, but via illiquid exchanges. And you might have a horse that's, well, we'll just pick an example out of the sky. You might have a horse that's 8 to 1 that goes to 4 to 1 in the 15 minutes before the show. That's oftentimes been done for a couple of grand.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, there's this big massive punt landed, but it's nothing. It's not the case. It's further from the truth. And you might also layer into that, you might have an even money horse in that race, and like the bookmakers can't give it away. The vibes are bad about it, whatever. It's sweating up in the ring. It's pulled its way at the post. It's round, whatever happens to happen. That even money shot is going out to 6 to 4. So like there's a lot of margin that has to be rebuilt into the book, because ultimately if they're in a 10-runner race, if they're betting to 2% the runner, their over round is going to 120%. So if the even money shot who was taking up 50% of the book drifts to 2 to 1, and he's now taking up 33% of the book, well, there's 17% of over round there that has to be redistributed amongst the other runners. The only way that can happen is to shorten the prices of other horses. So if you have a drift on a favourite like that, coupled with a 6 to 1 or an 8 to 1 shot that connections are looking to get money on, then the shortening of the odds of that 8 to 1 shot are far more magnified by the drift of the favourite than they are actually by the money being placed on it by the connections. And it's not, the art of bookmaking isn't what it was 30 years ago. Prices are available from early. Little effort is put into creating the prices early, because price origination is not where the value is created in bookmaking. The trading of prices is where the value is created in bookmaking, if there is value to be created, that is. Because if you have, if you take like a tier 1 bookmaker, and I take Bet365 as an example, tier 1 bookmaker, they have the best customer profile of any bookmaker in the industry. They can go any price they want, any horse in any race. And I guarantee you, within 15 minutes of them pricing it, their client base for small money will have told them where they need to be. And when I say small money, they for probably, I'm going to say for like 1% of their total turnover on the race, they're going to have that price traded to the correct point from those customers. So, using the market information is more important. So they can go 16-1 about a horse that might end up 4-1, and they've cut it from 16s into 7s for loose change. What you'd find in the bottom of your drawer, or in a coat that you haven't put on in a few weeks, you've left money in the pocket. That's the sort of money it takes to change that. So a lot of these, it's illusory. It looks from the outside looking in, they've landed a big gamble. They haven't. I had a horse win last year one day, and I remember having €100 on him on the track, but the horse went from he went from I'm going to say 10s into 6s. And I can remember driving home from the track and getting on the phone with my father, and my father was absolutely losing his mind with me down the phone, thinking I was after pulling off this big gamble. I hadn't told him anything about it. I had told him the back it, anything like this. And I said I had 100 quid on it. And I did a bit of inquiring, and I did a bit of looking at the market, and the favourite drifted. And it turns out that actually a high roller had backed it in one of the big firms that places money back on track and back through the markets. And so the trading room, the risk team from that firm had actually backed the horse back on track. And that they had probably caused the 10s to go to 8s, and the fact that they had backed it probably caused it from 8s to go to 6s, if you get me. Coupled with the fact that it was a weak market, there wouldn't have been €150,000 traded on it in Betfair. So it looks like it's massive. It looks like they've landed a great punt. And I'm sure if I went on Irish Racing that evening, I think that the headline was, such and such a trainer lands a tidy gamble in Ferryhouse. And in fact, as I remembered, I had €100 in cash on it, and having placed a bet, I went to the stand with my friend, and he says, "Can I have €20 of that 100?" I actually ended up at €80 on the horse, and it looked like, from the outside looking in, that it's big gambles. And a lot of the big, there's this romantic, there's this romantic notion around gambles. And oftentimes people that are getting involved, they're interested in horses and horse racing from the fringes. They'll have had the conversations about the Barney Curleys of the world, and all that sort of stuff. Money isn't made in gambling by following the gamble or by following the hot money. Money is made in gambling by doing your own work. And by backing your own edge. But people on the fringes, and those that are getting interested in they love the rumor mill and the messages. Like, I once had a screenshot of a WhatsApp group sent to me from Dubai, from the GA team in Dubai, for example, and the screenshot that it got sent to me from a friend, said, "Oh, Noel Hayes is a horse in Ferryhouse today, and he's going for a big gamble," this sort of stuff. And I'm there thinking, I haven't even considered backing this horse, if you get me. Yeah. But that's the sort of stuff that WhatsApp and communication, and Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, all that sort of stuff. And it's all guys that they're kind of falling in love with the game. They're probably €5 and €10 punters, and all they want is a rumor will travel halfway around the world before the truth has got out of bed, type of thing. So I think a lot of that leads to it, and it never is, or it rarely is what it might seem to be from the outside.
So when is a gamble definitely real? Can we trust perhaps the odds moving at the Cheltenham Festival mean something?
9 out of 10 cases, if there's money, if there's something moving in Cheltenham, then there's proper money moving it. I'm not saying that the money is smart, but there's proper money moving it. And if a horse on the flip side is drifting in Cheltenham, then it's kind of dead in the market. So it mightn't be smart money, but it's definitely moving, is what I would say. Now, can you follow it? I don't know. I don't think so. If you're doing your form study appropriately, then you should rarely be taken by surprise by any gamble in any race,
Mm-hmm.
because you would have you'd have a question mark or a caution against any horse that says that potentially there's something that you've seen about that horse that the market might speak for positively or favorably. That sort of thing. Can you follow money in Cheltenham? I mean, you can if you want to, but I don't think it's going to be a winning strategy long term. I don't think following money in general is going to be a winning strategy long term, because you're getting in after the dance, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys have, taken, whoever is driving it have taken the prices that they feel it's value at. The market often goes into protective mode after that. And, if you're getting in, at the bottom end of gambles, I think it's certain to be a losing strategy as a punter.
Once upon a time, an edge in betting on horse racing was as simple as knowing a good trainer or owner and getting tip-offs when a horse was banging form. And owner Tim Dykes does still get asked for tips.
Yeah, I do, and I've got a lot of friends who are in the game as well, and we all laugh about this as well. And it's and you touched on earlier on about that there's an impression that the owner and trainers know what's going to happen, and maybe when you have a horse and you're seeing the horse day-to-day basis, you've got some sort of edge to the market. But people say, oh, is your horse going to win? And really, I don't know. What I do know is it's an 8-to-1 shot, and I think it should be a 3-to-1 shot, so I'm backing it. But even a 3-to-1 shot, you're expecting to lose 3 out of 4 times. So it's the essence of gambling. It's just everything's about value. It's about getting it's getting a better price than the real chance of the event happening. And I think a lot of people, even seasoned punters, probably are more along the lines of black and white. Is this horse going to win, or is it going to get beaten? And it's as you know, it doesn't really work like that. So I did used to get mildly annoyed when people are asking the question, but actually now I just say what I think, and I'll say, yeah, it's got a chance as well, and it's I'm backing it today at a price bigger than 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, but I wouldn't be backing it if it's 2-to-1. So that's basically how I approach things.
Have you ever actually replied saying, yes, it's 100% certain to win today?
Probably only had a couple of times I've thought that, but when Born to Be Alive, he got beaten on his debut very, very narrowly, and he was up at air second time out, and that's as near to a certainty as I've ever had. So I think he won by 8 lengths on the bridle. 8 to 11, I think, and even 8 to 11 was a very generous price. So that sometimes it all lines up, and especially with the younger horses, it's unlikely. It would have been unlikely. We knew that he was going to be at least listed class, and he was running a box standard air Maiden, so we'd have been very unlucky to bump into something which was going to get us beat. So that would be the closest to a certainty that I've had.
For trainer Johnny Levens, the calls for tips are wasted on him, he says, as he actually thinks punters often know more than he does, thanks to the incredible amounts of data readily available online.
I don't think too many people ask me for tips. Trainers are the worst tipsters and jockeys. No, I tell you, to be honest with you, I don't find that common anymore. There's so much data now. People just, the racing post, the replays, the good punters make up their own mind. And even if I was to tell an owner, look, I think this will win today, 9 out of 10 the trainer says, oh no, it won't win, looking at the speed figures and looking at all the other database that they have and their own models and systems. They'll nearly tell you won't beat Joe Bloggs down the road. His horse is well in. So there's just so much data now for them that punters nowadays they're well clued up. Going back years ago, they didn't have all that information, and they were just willy-nilly backing horses there, thinking that they have an edge, but they don't. Now they do. Now there's so much data out there now, and people are a lot more clued up now. And I think the good punters make up their own mind. I don't think they're looking for information off trainers or jockeys. I think people I think even punters are even starting to get into the game, might ask you for opinions and things like that. But as they go on and learn, making up their own mind and getting their own models, I think that's when they make money. You know, as I said, like, you know, horses and training at home, you can work to a certain mark and run completely different. So too much information from a trainer is probably not good either, you know, because there's plenty of times we have horses here and we think, geez, this won't get beaten, and it doesn't run anywhere near its mark, you know. So too much information from the immediate side of the industry is sometimes doesn't work in their favour. I think punters nowadays are just well clued up, and they're a lot sharper nowadays. That they probably don't need much information firsthand, you know, to have their mind made up 10 o'clock that morning of the races, what horses they're going to back, you know.
Like, there's information from a trainer that's useful, but then also what you've made me think about there is you look at that horse every single day and perhaps your judgment gets a little clouded.
Yeah, possibly, yeah, that can work. I mean, like a trainer tipping a horse to somebody, if you ask them, I mean, all you have information is that he's going well, we're happy with him, and you know, there's a reason why we're running today is because it's just the right race and he's going well, you know. You know, no one's going to run a horse that they're not happy with, and they don't, you know, it's the wrong race and things like that. It's, you know, normally when the trainers nowadays, when they're running a horse, we're running because we're happy with it, you know. The only time is when we make a cold in a horse if we're running a horse and we've got a bad draw.
Yeah.
That's out of your hands, and you know, we thought we had a chance, but we're drawing 17 of 17 around a sharp track, or 50, 14 or 14 around Dundalk over 5 furlongs. I mean, now we've you know, we thought we had a 70% chance of winning, now we've only got a 40% chance. You know, you're running a horse in Leopardstown and the grounds that are drying right out, good drainage there, and it's gone fast, and it's just almost a little bit of a cut in the ground. And you know, there are only times when you're going there and you're hot. I wish I wasn't in this race now, but you have to run.
The online space is taking betting to a new level for punters and bookmakers. There is plenty of talk about larger punters finding it difficult to get bets on due to the high level of tracking available. But Noel Hayes can actually see online betting making it easier to stage large-scale gambles, like those infamously pulled off by Barney Curley.
Online betting enables it. There are punts landed week in, week out, that if the truth of them were known, it would break the internet. People don't, like, it's on an individual basis, it's incredibly hard to get money away, okay? But on a collective, smart, informed basis, you can move money. And not only can you move money, the bookmakers have created a system, a pricing and trading system for themselves, whilst it works in the majority of cases. It also leaves them incredibly vulnerable against people who know how to manipulate them. I spoke at the example about Bet365. They can go any price, any horse, and it's going to get knocked into shape for a very small amount of money. And then they're going to track Betfair after that in terms of keeping in line with the market, you know, and I use the term market. Like, you know, people look at Betfair 2:00 in the afternoon for an 8:00 race in Wolverhampton that night, and they think because there's 25 grand traded on it that the price there is correct. It's not correct. And bookmakers, it's a major weakness for bookmakers, and they're absolutely vulnerable against price manipulation. And it happens all the time, every day, in multiple races every day. Price manipulation is a big thing, and firms are very, very much exposed to that. I think so. Barney Curley obviously went for the multiples on the same day type scenario. That's still happening. Are people doing it successfully? Maybe not. But are people getting even money shots and able to average 4-1 about them? They absolutely are. Are people getting, 2 even money shots and being able to average 10-1 about them in a double? Say they are. So, like, if you're getting 10-1 about a 3-1 shot, you do that often enough. There's only going to be one winner. and there's only going to be one loser. You might lose today, but I mean, if you continue to be able to move that business with online firms, the firms are in a perilous position. And the reality of it is that the online industry is so big that it's actually able to absorb that sort of sharp business, and oftentimes not even able to identify that sort of sharp business. The tier one bookmakers, their size of their trading book is absolutely monstrous. And, they get tipped for a couple of 100,000 here or there. They're able to absorb it. They put it down to, the trading director will tell you it was late to the right customer, there was nothing they could do about it. And, we were all the excuses that get trotted out regularly in those sort of scenarios. But I think there will be plenty of Barney Curleys landed in the future. They just need to be done a little bit better than those who've tried recently.
So what's it like for a jockey knowing they're on a horse that's been well backed? I asked Paddy Aspel what effect it had on him when a trainer told him he thinks the horse is going to win today and that the owner has money on.
Obviously, every jockey has got a plan going out there. But if a trainer does say that to you, you'll always do your homework. But like I say, if you have a trainer who you think is pretty accurate for when he does say he fancies one, you will just do that little bit sort of more homework just to see, maybe to get an idea how the race is going to sort of develop and what's going to happen. Because it's all about, so often, it's all about sort of following the right one in a race and just maybe having as good an idea as you possibly can as to how the race is going to develop. Because if you can have sort of a roundabout plan in your head and it works out sort of, reasonably close to how you anticipated, it just does give you a better chance of riding the race that you had planned or, you think is suitable for your horse on the day. But like I said, there's an awful lot of factors involved, to be honest, Jess, because, you need the look and running, you need the gaps, stuff like that. And to be fair, on the day, the horse has got to be up to it as well. So there's a lot of factors involved just to land one little punt. If it is a trainer who, it's something that he doesn't it's a statement he doesn't use very often. Mm-hmm. It gives you confidence, because obviously he knows this horse far better than you. He's looking at him every day of the week. And, some trainers can judge their horses literally to the pound as far as how competitive they're going to be. So, if a trainer does say that to you on the day, it doesn't really put any more pressure on you, because at the end of the day, it's just another horse race. There's going to be another one along half an hour later. But like I say, if it's the right man who says it to you, it will just give you confidence. And I think it can help more than anything, because if you're confident in your trainer, you'll have a bit of confidence in your horse. And I think you can just ride him that little bit better, because, as I say, you've just got that confidence on your side. When you're going to start, obviously, your on-course commentator will obviously be giving sort of betting updates. So, yeah, you'll hear stuff like that, and you can sort of, if there was a certain trainer in opposition who is capable of landing a punt, and maybe if they were like really smashing their horse right before the off, that would sort of would sort of alter the goalpost a little bit, because, as I said, depending on who's involved, if there are shrewd connections, it would be in the back of your mind. But at the same time, if you are made aware of that beforehand, it can change your plan as to maybe, well, actually, this is the horse to follow during the race, or this is the horse to keep an eye out for, the one that's been back laid on. So, yeah, it can definitely make a difference for sure.
Does it add pressure to his day? No. And in fact, Aspel has been only too delighted to have been part of landing punts for owners, especially the small ones.
As far as pressure goes, like I say, at the end of the day, it is only another horse race. But when you've been sort of maybe heavily involved in the horse, or maybe you know the owners quite well, you've ridden for them quite a bit, and but generally, most owners who are owners who like a punt, they'll realise as well that at the end of the day, there is a lot of luck involved, and things can go wrong. It is a horse race, but like I say, it really is quite nice when it all comes together, because trying to land a little bet like that is, there's a lot of factors involved. So it's got to be it's a moment that's certainly got to be enjoyed by everyone, really. I just think, especially for maybe a smaller owner who might only have one or two horses in train, it just sort of, obviously they'll get a good kick out of it. It helps pay the bills, and it just makes it all worthwhile.
You listened this far to find out whether or not horse racing is all about landing gambles, and the answer is no, it's not. But that doesn't mean that gambles are not landed and that racehorse owners don't enjoy betting on their horses. It just means that while they like betting, they like horses more and winning more, and they realise that they're not machines, as evidenced by the extract from Tim Dykes we're going to leave you with now.
Ishikawa, actually, we ended up retiring him, and I gave him to a friend of mine, actually, who he's now a riding horse for her, and he's at stables probably 6 miles down the road from where I live, so we go and see him every time, and he's loving life and in really good health, and I still think he recognises me, probably because he knows I give him polos.
You've been listening to the Knowledge Podcast, brought to you by Gambling.com. To hear new episodes as soon as they're released, make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify and SoundCloud. Simply search for The Knowledge on your preferred platform. To keep up to date with all things gambling, make sure to follow Gambling.com on Twitter @gambling_com.